Hello, everybody. I'm Howard Goldman, and I'm going to be presenting this informative talk on essentially how to run an AUA course. So I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. Right now it's the winter. It's a little cold. So if you see me wearing my gloves as I drink my coffee, you'll understand why. So you become an AUA course director. And if you're watching this, you're either a director right now, or you're somebody who is being considered to be a director or perhaps is a new director. And you're a director of a course because you've been recognized as an expert in urology and somebody who's interested in educating the next generation or the current generation of urologists and other providers. So what we're going to talk about in probably the next half hour are different ways of making sure these courses work well. How do you design it? How do you develop the content? How do you choose and communicate with your faculty? And then how do you work with the AUA to make everything run seamlessly, smoothly, and work out well? So what is a course director exactly? Now, any course that has at least 2 faculty is going to have a course director. And the course director, or sometimes if it's a large or complex course, there may be co-directors, but the course director is there to make sure that the learning objectives are met and that the AUA mission is supported. And what that means is that this is a course that provides high quality, continuing medical education that is evidence-based and is free from commercial bias. Um, Typically, there will be 1 or 2 main points of contact with the AUA, who they do a majority of the day-to-day work, making sure that the course is going to happen well. But really, it's up to you to help design the course, pick the faculty, and things of that nature. So very important to have learning objectives in any course, including the one we're doing right now. So at the end of this brief course, you should be able to describe the scope and the responsibilities of a course director and how that role plays out. You should be able to describe some of the keys to developing a successful educational activity from beginning to end. Describe and discuss the important factors that allow for successful selection and communication with faculty, and also provide and list the resources which are provided to course directors by the AUA to support such an activity. So what are the roles and responsibilities of a course director? As we've alluded to, it's to design and plan the course. And of course, this is just as important as what goes on that final day or weekend when the actual course happens. And by really having a good vision, by looking and seeing what the scope of the course is going to be, what the format's going to be, what the topics, what the objectives are, you're able to create a roadmap for both yourself and for the AUA. And some of the steps that you're going to hear about in the next few minutes will actually help concretize that and help you with planning for a course like this. So the first thing is there's an agreement which you have to sign. Make sure you read it carefully because there is a lot of important information in there. Some of that information has to do with being timely. It's critical to have good communication with your AUA liaison and really be able to respond to them in a timely fashion when things come up. The AUA staff will make sure that everything's running on schedule and that things are coming in appropriately, but when they do need your help or something comes up, please respond to them. Let them know what you like best: email, text, phone call, what have you. There are going to be some meetings before the course in order to plan it, and there will also be some meetings afterwards to go over it, to look at the reviews, things of that nature. So make sure that you are very responsive with that. The other thing the AUA may ask is there may be sponsors sometimes for these courses, whether it's from industry or something like that, and you may be in a position where you have the best knowledge of what are the appropriate companies to reach out for, what are the appropriate treatments to look at, if you're doing a hands-on course, who are the appropriate companies to ask for, possibly for machines or other items that can be helpful. So please stay in close communication with your AUA liaison for those sorts of things. Now, choosing faculty is critical. critical, critical, critical. We're going to come back to that more later, but I'll just lay it out now. You obviously want someone who's a expert in the area that they're speaking. You want someone who can speak well, someone who's engaging. You don't want someone that everybody's going to fall asleep from. And finally, you want somebody who is responsive, somebody who, when they are given deadlines, as in their lectures are due by such and such date, or certain forms have to be signed, et cetera, you want someone that you don't have to go chasing down. There's nothing worse than having to call someone in the OR because they're 3 days overdue and they're ready to print up the booklet, but they can't do it without this person's stuff. So you want someone who has a history of being responsive. There are all kinds of deadlines that have to be met. There are questions that have to be created for some of the self-assessment, things of that nature. So that's something that you'll need to work with the AUA staff on and make sure that your lecturers are keeping up with that. And then as far as content, you're going to, together with the AUA, envision what the course looks like, come up with the content, communicate that to your faculty, and then make sure that the faculty stays on target when it comes to that. Again, these courses in general are accredited, and there are a bunch of rules and regulations that have to do with accreditation. So one of your roles is making sure that everybody is on board with filling out the right documents, appropriate conflict of interest. The AUA staff will look at disclosures, make sure there are not any inappropriate conflicts of interest. And that doesn't mean anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just that there are certain things that, for instance, if somebody is a owner of a medical company or is employed by one, that puts some significant limitations on their ability to lecture at some of these courses. So a lot of different things that it's important for you to do. And then also, after a course, you're always going to try to solicit feedback, and it's important to help the AUA get that feedback. All right, so developing the activity, let's get to that. So what do you do to create a CME activity? There are a lot of important things. First, you've got to figure out what's the need. Why are you doing this activity? What's the gap that's out there? Once you figure that out, come up with learning objectives. What are you trying? What are the results you're seeking? Figure out how it's going to be done. What's the format? Is it more of a didactic thing? Is it case-based? Is it hands-on? Whatnot? At that point, develop the content, figure out what the program is going to be, find your faculty, and we'll come back again more to that. There are always evaluations in these courses, so collect and help solicit the evaluations and collect them, and then with the AUA staff, go ahead and analyze those outcomes. So again, identify the need. What is it that you're trying to fix? What sort of knowledge is lacking that the AUA has decided with you we need a course for? So that's number one. And then you have to figure out, why is this so? Is this because there's not enough education on this? Is this because, whatever the case may be, why is this so? And then you're going to, with the AUA, be trying to figure out how can you fix that via this course that you are developing and that you're involved with. All right, learning objectives are very important. Again, what is the result? What's the intended result? What do you want the learner to take away from this course? And you have to make it very clear. And are these practical? Can you actually, via this course, fill this gap, fill this need? Can you actually implement these things? You want to come up with learning objectives. And again, you want to use, this is a big thing, when you have your objectives, use actionable and strong verbs. Don't just say understand or learn, things like that. Use things that are very strong, and the AUA actually has a list somewhere that will help you with finding those. All right, formats and teaching methods. There are obviously a lot of different ways to teach, and so it's important to, from the beginning, really have a good idea of how you're going to do this. Now, obviously, things can change as you go along, and there's some courses. So one of the things that I do is I've run the annual review course or been a co-lead on that for about 7 or 8 years. And so within that activity, we have 3 solid days of lectures with many, many lecturers. And so we actually have different teaching methods spread throughout that entire course. So there may be some people who are doing just a didactic lecture. There are others where there may be some panel discussions. There are others where we almost use some of these new games that people can do from their phone with questions and answers and competing for points. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do these things. So again, first thing, what's the format? Is this live? Is it a webinar? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you've crossed that path, how are you going to teach? Again, didactic, hands-on, breakouts. And a lot of this has to do with what the topic is, what the setting is. And I could tell you there's a push as much as possible away from straight didactics. We really want people to get involved. That seems to be, particularly with the younger people these days, they don't like just sitting and listening to lectures if that could be avoided. All right, so again, part of this, the format is going to be what your need is, what your goal is. If you're trying to teach people how to use ultrasound to do transperineal prostate biopsies, so you're probably going to want some ultrasound machines and some fake pelvies or whatever the case may be. On the other hand, if you're just teaching about, if you're teaching surgical techniques, you may want videos, things of that nature. So there are a lot of different techniques, but you should sort of tailor it for what that educational need and align it with the learning objectives. And again, as we said, you can have one activity like the AUA review course where we have a lot of different techniques all mixed in. When you are doing presentations, when there are didactic portions, which there usually will be at some level, better to keep them short, keep them focused, and have time for questions and answers. All right, now let's make the scientific program. Looks like they're building a nice building there with a crane. Okay, so once you know what your gaps are, what your objectives are, and you have a good sense of what your format and your methods are, then it's time to really come up with your agenda for the scientific program. And that's your schedule of events. Now, you want a coherent flow. So for instance, you'll often start with some of the more basic information first and get more complex as you go along. There should be sort of an intuitive nature to it. Group topics with similar things, categories together. Again, go basic to complex. And in many of the programs, I mean, if it's more than a 2-hour quick little program, you're going to want to build in breaks, time for physicians maybe to call the office, time for people to socialize, time for some refreshments, what have you. So you're going to want to really build it up like that. The other thing is be strategic. So you don't want the more, of course, no topics are boring, but some are more exciting than others. And you don't want the less exciting topic to be right after a big lunch when people may be likely to snooze. By the same token, you want to try to save a pretty strong lecture or a well-known lecturer for the end, so that people may be looking at flights and say, oh, let's get out of here a little earlier, whereas we'd prefer them to stay for the whole thing. So you may want to keep something important towards the end. All right, picking faculty. This is really, really critical. So obviously you want somebody who has expertise in that topic that they're talking on. But again, there are different levels of topics. So if I'm doing the AUA review course, the person who's doing the prostate cancer lecture on that doesn't necessarily have to be the world expert on prostate cancer. It can just be somebody who is very knowledgeable about prostate cancer. On the other hand, if you're doing a state-of-the-art lecture on the absolute latest, I don't even know these things anymore, but the latest specific type of PSA, yada, 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 well, then you're going to want someone who is the person who probably knows more about that than anyone else in the room, if not anyone anywhere else. So again, it depends on what you're teaching, who the audience is, what the topic is, your level of expertise. But for whatever the topic is, you want them to be an expert in that topic. All right, critical. You want someone who's going to meet deadlines. As I said earlier, there are deadlines. There are certain papers that have to be signed. There are conflict of interest disclosures that have to be handed into the AUA. They have to get in questions at a certain point. They have to hand in their lectures at a certain point. And you do not want people that you're going to be having to track down and chase. I mean, the AUA will start with that, but then they will sometimes have to hand it over to you when they can't get these people to do their job. So you really pick people who have a reputation for being on time. You want people who are professional. Obviously, the AUA, we're not interested in having any kind of issues. If something's not, if there's something's not going right, or is inappropriate, talk to the AUA. They'll take care of things. And then you do want to have a diverse makeup of faculty. In the AUA review course, when I started, I think there were 1 or 2 women lecturers, and now almost half the course are women. You don't want everybody from the Mayo Clinic or just everyone from the Cleveland Clinic or wherever. You want people from different institutions, geographic variability, et cetera, et cetera. So go ahead and try to spread that out. Trust me, there are excellent urologists who are excellent speakers all over the country, every race, color, creed. You can find good people. You want to avoid conflicts of interests. So again, this is something that is going to be more to the AUA. The AUA will look at the faculty conflict of interests, and there are certain things that if someone, for instance, owns a company in that area, if someone owns some kind of PSA company, they're obviously not going to be talking about PSA and things of that nature. But that you leave to the AUA. All right, so we've kind of planned it. We've invited everybody, and now let's make it happen. So work with the AUA staff. They are great. They will provide you with all the information you need. Just answer when they need you, be there for them. But they'll give you all the parameters. They'll help you with logistics. They'll tell you what the budget is, et cetera, et cetera. Communicate clearly with your faculty. Let them know what's going on and let them know exactly what's being asked of them. And again, the AUA will be doing a lot of this. But let the faculty know exactly what your expectations are, and talk to them or send them an email with exactly what you want them to be presenting on. The other thing is, at some point you're going to have to look at the content, because if you have a few speakers, you want to make sure that there's really minimal overlap. So you'll have to look at things or have some of them communicate amongst themselves to minimize that sort of thing. The faculty have their own deadlines. They have their own faculty agreement, things of that nature. So you may have to help the AUA with reminders to these folks to complete what they're supposed to be doing. Now, when you get to the actual course, so obviously there's a big thing with the time and how much time people have. There are times that people seem to ignore the clock, and as a course director, you will have to sometimes, hopefully not often, but sometimes be in the uncomfortable position of standing in the back of the room and kind of waving your hand, telling someone time's up, or even sometimes having to approach the podium, because these courses, things need to run on time. Obviously a minute or 2 here and there we can deal with, but when there are issues, that's something you may have to get involved in. So again, AUA staff, they're the ones who'll guide you, hold your hand through all of this. They'll set the timelines. They'll let you know exactly what is expected. They'll stay in touch with the faculty, communicate with them. And if there's hands-on skill training where you got to bring in other equipment, things of that nature, they will obviously do a lot of that. Again, communicate with your faculty, whether, depending on the type of course, whether it's something that you have to have, occasional meetings with everybody, or it's something that you can talk to people individually, whatever it is. Just really want to keep on top of things to make sure that everybody is kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing, so you don't end up a few weeks before the course and things aren't lined up exactly as it should be. All right, so once the course has happened, it's very, very important to collect evaluations. Often what they do is they'll give a pre-test, and then after the course they'll give a post-test, and they can see what kind of improvements there have been. So there are a lot of different things, and this is very critical and very important, because we use this information to help improve the courses if it's going to be done again, or perhaps redesign courses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of different ways that they do this. As I said, they use pre-tests and post-tests. Some courses will also use questions where they will ask the faculty for each lecture to design 2 or 3 questions, which may be given, again, those questions may be given before and after. There's also evaluations that are given at the end that are very important. For those of you who are interested, there's actually a whole module on how to write questions for these sorts of courses, and that you can look at through the AUA. All right, so again, it's very important to look at the outcomes. And what will happen is the AUA themselves will often send an evaluation out. Some evaluations may be filled out at the actual time of the event. Some will maybe come afterwards. Those post-tests, all that sort of stuff. And the AUA, your liaisons will organize all that, and that's where probably a post-call somewhere a few weeks later to really look at the data, look at if there are areas where perhaps we didn't do as well as we should have, look at the comments, look at other gaps that might be there. But this is all very important really for the future, to make better courses and really to assist us as well as the AUA in looking at these courses. Again, how do you make this happen? Start with clear objectives so you know what you're trying to do. Really remind the people to return the evaluations and complete the evaluations. At many of the courses, the AUA will have a whole typed out sheet of what you should be reading at every break and reminding people, things of that nature. So always let the participants know that we take these very seriously, and for them to please really, really complete them. Again, some of the multiple choice questions, we'll do a pre-test, a post-test, things like that. Again, that also helps us understand what was the change in knowledge level beforehand and then after your course. So I think that covers most of it. If I had to just sum it up at the end, really work closely and listen to the AUA staff who are working with you on a course. They really have the information. They're going to look to you more to help design the topics, more to help find faculty, more to help get evaluations in, things of that nature. But really try to keep to timelines, pick good faculty, write strong objectives, write good multiple choice questions, and then really help solicit evaluations, and then afterwards evaluate them, and that way you can make improvements going forward. It's a lot of fun doing these courses, so I wish you the best. Thank you.